every night at 8 p.m., my husband locked his home office door. For 30 years of marriage, I heard that deadbolt slide into place, a sound as reliable as his goodnight kiss. Lance Hull was methodical about two things, his fortune and his privacy. The office was his sanctuary, he'd say, where billion-dollar deals required focus. I never questioned it. Why would I? The penthouses, the yacht, the black Amex, they were proof the system worked. He'd emerge at 9 p.m. sharp, loosen his tie, and ask about my day, as if those 60 minutes behind the locked door were perfectly ordinary. Then he died. Sudden. A stroke in his sleep at 62. The funeral was tasteful, the kind of elegance old money demands. But standing in our empty mansion afterward, I realized I'd never seen inside that office after 8 p.m. 30 years, and I'd never turned that handle. The locksmith came on a Wednesday. The drawer wasn't even hidden, just locked. Inside, a red cloth, stacks of cash in rubber bands, and 5 passports. All with Lance's face. None with his name. I called 911 with shaking hands. I didn't know the man I'd buried was already dead. For 30 years, Christy Hull lived in luxury, never questioning why her billionaire husband locked his office door every night at 8 p.m. It was just Lance's routine until he died suddenly, leaving her alone with that locked door and a lifetime of unanswered questions. When Christy finally broke in, she found something that shattered everything she thought she knew. Hidden beneath a red cloth weren't business documents, but stacks of cash, 5 passports with Lance's face and different names, and evidence of crimes she couldn't even comprehend. Her husband wasn't just a businessman. He was a criminal mastermind. She called 911, thinking she was doing the right thing. Instead, it triggered a nightmare. The FBI believed she was his accomplice, the queen hiding billions. And Lance's partners? They thought she had their insurance policy and would kill to get it back. Suddenly, Christy wasn't just a wealthy widow. She was a suspect, a target, and completely alone. With her accounts frozen, her friends vanishing, and killers closing in, she had to transform from a passive trophy wife into a fighter, racing to expose the truth before she became the next victim of her husband's secrets. What would you do if you discovered your entire life was built on lies? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping true crime stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. The last of the town cars pulled away just after sunset, their red taillights disappearing down the curved driveway like dying embers. I watched from the foyer window until even the sound faded, leaving nothing but the hum of the central air and the tick of the grandfather clock Lance's mother had shipped from Geneva. The house felt larger than its 12,000 square feet. Rooms I'd decorated with designers whose names I couldn't pronounce now seemed like stage sets waiting for actors who would never arrive. The caterers had cleared everything with military efficiency. No trace of the reception remained except a faint scent of lilies that made my stomach turn. I climbed the stairs in my funeral heels, each step echoing against marble. Our bedroom door stood open, his side of the closet already feeling like a museum exhibit. I changed into jeans and a sweater, catching my reflection in the mirror. 73 years old, and I looked like someone's elegant grandmother. That's what I was supposed to be. That's what 30 years of marriage to Lance Hull had made me. The office door waited at the end of the hall. Dark mahogany. Brass handle. That deadbolt I'd heard click into place 10,000 times. I'd walked past it every day for 3 decades, never once trying the handle after 8 p.m. It wasn't forbidden, exactly. Lance had never said I couldn't go in. But there was an understanding, the kind that doesn't require words in a marriage. His space. His time. His business. Except there was no business anymore. No Lance. No reason for the door to stay locked. I stood there for 20 minutes, hand hovering over the handle. The rational part of my brain supplied reasonable explanations. Financial documents he didn't want me worrying about. Surprise gifts he'd been planning. A messy desk he was embarrassed for me to see. But rational thoughts don't make your pulse hammer in your throat. The locksmith's card was still in my purse from when I'd locked myself out of the pool house last summer. I could call him, tell him I'd lost the key. He'd come, drill it out, ask no questions beyond his invoice. Or I could leave it locked. Sell the house as is, let someone else discover whatever Lance had been protecting. I thought about the funeral, the governor's speech, the charitable foundation tributes. A titan of industry, they'd called him. A pillar of the community. I'd nodded through it all, the grieving widow in Chanel black, accepting condolences from people who'd never asked where the money came from. My hand closed around the handle. Locked as expected. I called the locksmith. He could be here in 40 minutes. I went downstairs and poured myself Lance's scotch, the $3,000 bottle he saved for special occasions. This felt special enough. When the doorbell rang, I answered it with an empty glass and a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I need you to open a door. The locksmith's drill whined for 30 seconds before the deadbolt gave up its secrets. He pocketed $200 bills without meeting my eyes and left me standing in the doorway of a room I'd never seen after dark. Lance's office looked exactly as I'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes he'd probably never read. The mahogany desk faced windows overlooking the grounds, now black mirrors reflecting the single lamp I'd switched on. Diplomas on the wall. A Globe bar cart. Everything a billionaire's private sanctuary should contain. Except for the smell. Stale air, like the room had been holding its breath. I circled the desk slowly, running my fingers along its polished edge. No papers left out. No computer. He'd always used a laptop he kept with him. The surface was clear except for a fountain pen in a marble holder and a leather desk pad that had probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. 3 drawers on the right side. The top 2 opened smoothly. File folders, office supplies, nothing remarkable. The bottom drawer didn't budge. I knelt on the Persian rug, expensive fabric pressing into my knees, and tried again. Locked. A small keyhole, the old-fashioned kind. I searched the top drawers for a key, then the pencil holder, then under the desk pad. Nothing. The letter opener was heavy silver, an anniversary gift I'd given him 15 years ago. I'd never imagined using it for this. The wood around the lock was old, decorative more than functional. It took 3 tries, my hands slipping with sweat, before something splintered. The drawer rolled open. A red cloth lay on top, silk by the feel of it, covering something bulky. My fingers trembled as I pulled it back. Cash. Stacks of $100 bills bound with rubber bands, arranged in neat rows. I didn't count them. Couldn't. My brain refused to process the sheer volume. Underneath the money, passports. 5 of them, different colors. I opened the first one with hands that no longer felt like mine. Lance's photograph stared back at me. But the name read Michael Torrance. Canadian passport, issued 3 years ago, stamped with entry marks from countries I'd never heard him mention. The second passport, David Reichman. German. The third, James Sutton. British. Each one perfect. Each one him. Each one a stranger. My phone was in my hand before I'd made a conscious decision. My fingers moved through muscle memory, 3 numbers I'd never had to call before. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was calm, professional, probably trained for hysterical callers. But I wasn't hysterical. I was somewhere beyond that, in a place where words felt like foreign objects in my mouth. My voice cracked. I looked at the passports spread across the desk, at Lance's face multiplied into 5 different men. My husband died 3 days ago. I just found. I don't know what I found. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? Was I? The house was empty. Lance was dead. But staring at those photographs, I realized I'd been in danger for 30 years. I just hadn't known it. They arrived in unmarked cars, which should have been my first warning. No sirens, no flashing lights, just 3 black sedans gliding up the driveway like sharks circling prey. I'd expected local police, maybe a detective. Instead, 6 people in dark suits fanned out across my foyer with the efficiency of a military operation. The woman who showed me her badge introduced herself as Special Agent Sarah Vance, FBI Financial Crimes Division. She had the kind of face that revealed nothing, all sharp angles and practiced neutrality. Her partner, a man who didn't offer his name, was already photographing the office before I'd finished reading her credentials. Mrs. Hull, we need you to walk us through exactly what you found and when. Vance gestured toward the living room like she owned it. Like I was a guest in my own home. I told her everything. The locked door, the locksmith, the drawer. My voice sounded steadier than I felt, each word carefully placed like stones across a river I couldn't see the bottom of. She didn't write anything down. Just watched me with eyes that felt like they were cataloging every breath, every pause, every movement of my hands. And you're telling me that in 30 years of marriage, you never once entered this office after 8 p.m.? That's correct. Never wondered what he was doing in there? My husband was a businessman. He needed privacy for his work. His work. Vance repeated the words like they were evidence of something. Mrs. Hull, do you know what your husband actually did for a living? The question landed like a slap. He was an investor. Private equity, venture capital. Can you name a single company he invested in? The silence stretched between us. I opened my mouth and found nothing there. 30 years, and I couldn't name one deal, one client, one specific business transaction. I'd been too busy enjoying the results to question the mechanism. We've been investigating Lance Hull for 6 years, Vance said quietly. Money laundering, fraud, racketeering. We were 3 weeks from executing search warrants when he conveniently died. Conveniently. The word hung in the air like smoke. You think I had something to do with I couldn't finish the sentence. I think he lived in a $40 million mansion, drove a car worth more than most people's houses, and wore jewelry that could fund a small country. I think you benefited from every crime your husband committed. She leaned forward. And I think you knew exactly what was in that drawer before you called us. That's insane. I just found. Where's the rest of it, Mrs. Hull? The rest of what? The money. The accounts. The ledgers. 5 passports and $200,000 in cash? That's pocket change for a man who moved $500 million through ghost corporations. Her smile was cold. So I'll ask you again, where's the rest? I looked at the faces surrounding me, federal agents in my living room, going through my life like archaeologists examining ruins. And I understood with perfect, horrible clarity, I wasn't the victim here. I was the prime suspect. The asset freeze came through at 6:47 a.m., delivered via email, because the FBI couldn't be bothered with the courtesy of a phone call. Every account. Every credit card. Every investment portfolio Lance had put in both our names for tax purposes, he'd said, and I'd signed wherever he'd pointed. I discovered it at the grocery store, of all places. My black Amex declined at the register while a line of strangers watched me fumble through my wallet for a card that would work. None of them did. The cashier's expression shifted from polite to pitying as I abandoned a cart full of food I suddenly couldn't afford. The drive home took 15 minutes. My phone rang 7 times. I ignored them all until I saw Patricia Wentworth's name. Patricia, who'd shared charity galas with me for a decade, who'd sobbed theatrically at Lance's funeral about losing such a dear friend. Christy, darling. Her voice had that particular tone wealthy women use when delivering bad news they're secretly enjoying. I'm calling because I care about you, and I think you should know the club board met this morning. Given this situation, they've decided to suspend your membership pending the investigation. What situation, Patricia? Well, the news, obviously. It's all over the financial networks. They're calling Lance a criminal, and you, she paused delicately. They're saying you had to have known. I hung up before she could finish. The news was easy to find. My husband's face plastered across every financial website, each headline more damning than the last. Billionaire's billion-dollar fraud. The widow who knew too much. Anonymous sources claimed I'd been Lance's accomplice, his partner in crime, the mastermind hiding behind expensive pearls and charitable donations. By noon, 3 more friends had called to check in. By 2, my lawyer, the one Lance had used for years, left a voicemail saying he could no longer represent me due to conflicts of interest. His voice had that same careful distance Patricia's had. Everyone was backing away, leaving me alone on a sinking ship. I spent the afternoon watching my life evaporate through phone calls and emails. The country club, the museum board, the women I'd had lunch with every Thursday for 15 years. All of them vanishing like smoke, their sympathy contingent on my social standing, and my social standing was currently somewhere below pond scum. The note appeared at dusk. I'd gone to the garage for Lance's scotch, the good bottles he'd kept in a climate-controlled cabinet, and found it tucked under my windshield wiper. Plain white envelope, no markings. My name written in block capitals. Inside, a single sentence in the same anonymous hand. The passports aren't the only thing he hid. We want what's ours. No signature. No demands. Just that terrifying plural, we. I stood in the garage holding the note and understood that the FBI wasn't my only problem. Someone else knew about Lance's secrets. Someone who thought I had answers. Someone who knew where I lived. Richard Caldwell had been Lance's lawyer for 20 years. Silver-haired Ivy League, the kind of attorney who wore cufflinks that cost more than cars. His office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel and the illusion of transparency. I called him back despite the voicemail. Begged, actually, which wasn't something I'd done in 30 years. He agreed to see me at 7 p.m. after his other clients had left. Discretion, he'd said, and I'd been grateful for it. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like ascending to judgment. The reception area was empty, lights dimmed, my heels clicking against marble the only sound. Richard waited in his office doorway, but the warmth I'd expected was absent. His smile was mechanical, professional courtesy stretched thin. Christy, come in. His office overlooked the city, a blanket of lights spreading to the horizon. I used to find views like this comforting, proof of order, civilization, systems that worked. Now they just looked like hiding places. Richard, I need help. The FBI froze everything, and I don't understand what's happening. Lance never told me about any of this. Didn't he? Richard moved behind his desk, not offering me a seat. Christy, let's not waste time with convenient ignorance. You signed documents. Dozens of them. Trusts, transfers, offshore accounts. You told me to sign them. You said it was estate planning. And you never asked what you were planning for? He opened a drawer, pulled out a thick file. My name on the tab. You authorized transfers to shell corporations in the Caymans, Christy. You co-signed loans for businesses that existed only on paper. Your signature is on every transaction. The floor seemed to tilt. You said it was tax optimization. I said what you wanted to hear. He opened the file, and I saw my signature repeated across page after page. Documents I barely remembered, meetings where I'd signed while Richard had explained things in language designed to glaze eyes. The FBI will find your name on all of it. And they'll find mine, which is why we need to have a very different conversation. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. Lance kept records, Richard continued. A ledger. Physical, not digital. He was paranoid about electronic trails. And before he died, he told his partners it was here. In the house. Hidden somewhere you'd have access to. Partners. The word from the note. I don't know what you're talking about. Then you'd better figure it out. He came around the desk, and I stepped back instinctively. Because the people Lance worked with aren't patient. They want their insurance policy back, and they think you have it. You're one of them. I'm a pragmatist. He reached for his phone. And I'm making a call right now to tell them you're being difficult. Unless you'd like to save us all time and... I didn't wait to hear the rest. My hand found the crystal paperweight on his desk, some award for legal excellence, and I hurled it at the window behind him. The glass spider-webbed, but didn't break, and Richard spun toward the sound. I ran. Through the reception area, my purse swinging wildly. Behind me, Richard shouted, You can't run from this. The elevator was too slow. I hit the stairwell door, taking steps 2 at a time, 42 floors between me and the street. My lungs burned by the 20th floor. My legs screamed by the 10th. But I didn't stop until I crashed through the lobby exit into the night air, where anonymous crowds and traffic noise could swallow me whole. I waited until 2 a.m. to return home, parking 3 blocks away and approaching through the neighbor's property like a thief. My own house had become enemy territory, every shadow a potential threat, every sound a reason to freeze. The back door was unlocked. I never left it unlocked. My hand hovered over my phone, 911 already queued, but what would I tell them? The FBI thought I was a criminal. Richard and his partners wanted something I supposedly had. I was alone in this, and calling for help would only make it worse. The kitchen was dark, untouched. I slipped off my shoes and moved through rooms I'd decorated with designers whose names didn't matter anymore. Every creak of the old house felt amplified, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The office door stood open. I'd left it closed. I pressed myself against the hallway wall, listening. Nothing. Just the ambient hum of a house that cost more to maintain each month than most people earned in a year. But someone had been here. Was maybe still here. The ledger. Lance's insurance policy. Hidden somewhere I'd have access to. I'd have access to everything in this house. That was the problem. 12,000 square feet of potential hiding places, and I had no idea what I was looking for. Unless. The office wasn't just Lance's workspace. It was his ritual. Every night at 8, that deadbolt sliding home. 60 minutes alone. If he was hiding something, it would be in that room, somewhere he could access during his nightly lockdown. I moved through the doorway, phone flashlight cutting through darkness. The desk drawer I'd pried open gaped empty. The FBI had taken everything. But Richard had said physical records, something Lance was paranoid about. Something that wouldn't show up in electronic searches. The bookshelves. Hundreds of leather-bound volumes I'd never seen him read. I started pulling books, checking behind them, looking for false backs or hidden compartments like some kind of movie cliché. Nothing. Just dust and pretension. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun, phone light catching a figure in the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, face obscured by shadow. My scream died in my throat, replaced by pure survival instinct. I threw the book. Heavy hardcover caught him in the chest. He grunted, stumbled, and I was already moving around the desk, toward the window. My fingers found the antique letter opener, the one I'd used to break the drawer lock. Mrs. Hull, wait. But I wasn't waiting. 30 years of comfortable compliance had ended the moment I'd opened that drawer. I gripped the letter opener like a knife and faced the intruder. He raised his hands slowly, stepping into the light from the hallway. Mid-40s, wearing dark clothes but not a mask. His face was angular, tired, with the kind of careful awareness that suggested training. "My name is Marcus Webb," he said quietly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because your husband hired me 6 months before he died." "Hired you for what?" "To make sure you survived what came next." In the distance, I heard it, the sound of a car door closing. More than one. Richard hadn't given me 48 hours after all. Marcus heard it too. His expression hardened. "We need to find that ledger right now, and then we need to run." Marcus found the ledger in 90 seconds flat. Not hidden in some elaborate safe or beneath floorboards, but inside the hollowed-out globe on Lance's bar cart, the one I'd walked past 10,000 times without a second glance. A leather-bound journal, pages filled with names, dates, account numbers in Lance's meticulous handwriting. We were out the back door before Richard's men reached the front. Marcus moved like smoke through the darkness, pulling me across the lawn toward a nondescript sedan parked on the service road. I clutched the ledger against my chest like a life raft. "Where are we going?" "Anywhere but here." He drove for 2 hours, switching highways 3 times, checking mirrors with the practiced paranoia of someone who'd spent a lifetime looking over his shoulder. I didn't ask questions. Didn't have the energy. Just watched my life recede through the rear window, the mansion, the town, the carefully constructed identity of Mrs. Lance Hull disappearing into darkness. The Starlight Motor Lodge sat off Route 9, wedged between a truck stop and an abandoned strip mall. $40 a night, cash only, the kind of place that didn't ask for ID if you paid in advance. Marcus handed bills to a clerk who barely looked up from his phone. Room 17 smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner, a smell I'd never encountered in 30 years of five-star hotels. The carpet was stained, the bedspread thin, a window air conditioner rattling against the night. One bed, one chair, a bathroom I didn't want to examine too closely. I sat on the edge of the bed and started laughing. Couldn't help it. The sound came out wrong, too high, edging toward hysteria. "Mrs. Hull." "Christy," I said. "If we're hiding in a $40 motel room, you should probably call me Christy." Marcus pulled the chair to the door, positioning himself between me and anyone who might come through it. "We're safe here for tonight. Tomorrow we move." "Move where?" "I don't have money. I don't have credit cards." The FBI froze everything, and apparently I've been signing my name to financial crimes for 20 years without noticing. I looked down at my clothes, designer cashmere, silk blouse, shoes that cost more than this room cost for a month. I don't even know how to be this person. Your husband thought you might need help. That's why he hired me. 6 months before he died. I opened the ledger, pages filled with secrets Lance had kept from me. Did he know? That he was dying. I think he knew someone wanted him dead. Marcus's expression was unreadable. And I think he knew they'd come for you next. The air conditioner rattled louder, and I pulled the thin bedspread around my shoulders. Outside, trucks rumbled past on the highway, carrying goods to places I'd never been, driven by people who actually worked for their money. I'd spent 30 years in a gilded cage, and now the door was finally open. I just wished I knew what was waiting outside. Marcus made the call at dawn from a burner phone he'd produced from the glove compartment. I listened to half of a cryptic conversation involving a diner, a time, and the phrase, "She is what you've been looking for." Who is that? Someone who hates your husband almost as much as Richard Caldwell's people do. He pocketed the phone. "Get cleaned up. We leave in 20 minutes. The diner was the kind of place where coffee came in chipped mugs and the menu was laminated and sticky. We took a corner booth with a view of the parking lot. Marcus ordered eggs he didn't eat, just watched the door with that same vigilant stillness. She arrived at 8:15. Mid-50s, dark hair pulled into a ponytail, carrying a laptop bag that had seen better decades. She slid into the booth across from me without introduction, her eyes cataloging every detail of my face like she was memorizing evidence. "You look different without the pearls," she said. "I'm sorry, who?" "Elena Vasquez. I've been writing about your husband for 6 years. Or trying to. Every editor I pitched killed the story. Threatened lawsuits, lost evidence, sources who suddenly refused to talk." She pulled out a battered notebook, flipped it open. "Lance Hull was very good at making problems disappear. And you think I'm going to help you? I think you're going to save yourself." Elena's gaze was sharp, unflinching. "Because right now, the FBI thinks you're the queenpin, and Lance's partners think you're holding their insurance policy. You're trapped between two forces that want to destroy you, and the only way out is exposure. Full, public, undeniable exposure." "I don't understand." "You go public with everything. The ledger, the passports, all of it. You become a witness instead of a suspect. You testify, you cooperate, and you make it impossible for either side to make you disappear quietly." I clutched my coffee mug, the warmth barely penetrating. I signed documents. Richard showed me my name is on everything. Under duress. Under false pretenses. A wife who trusted her husband and his lawyer. Elena leaned forward. "I've spent years building a case against Lance. I have sources in 3 countries, financial experts who can trace the money. What I don't have is the ledger. That's the smoking gun. Names, dates, transactions, everything his partners need to stay hidden. And everything the FBI needs to dismantle the whole operation." "Why were you writing about Lance?" Something flickered across her face, pain, old and deep. Because 5 years ago, my brother invested his life savings in one of Lance's ventures. A medical device company that promised revolutionary technology. It didn't exist. The money vanished into shell corporations, and my brother, she stopped, steadied herself. He killed himself when he realized it was gone. Everything. His family's future gone. The diner felt too small suddenly, the air too thick. Lance did that. Lance did that to 47 people. That I can prove. Probably hundreds more. Elena's joy tightened. So yes, Mrs. Hull, I want to help you. And in return, you're going to help me bury your husband's legacy so deep, it never hurts anyone again. Agent Vance didn't believe me at first. We met in a parking garage downtown, Elena's burner phone connecting us after 12 hours of negotiation through intermediaries. Vance arrived with 2 other agents, faces I recognized from my living room interrogation. You're asking for immunity. Vance's tone was flat, skeptical. In exchange for what exactly? I handed her a photocopy, just 3 pages from the ledger, enough to prove what I had. She studied them in the dim garage light, her expression shifting from doubt to something harder, more focused. This is authenticated? Every name in that book connects to your investigation, Elena said from beside me. She'd insisted on coming, protection, and witness both. Shell corporations, offshore accounts, the entire network. Mrs. Hull is offering you the case you've been building for 6 years. Wrapped up and delivered. In exchange for walking away from conspiracy charges. Vance looked at me. You signed those documents, Mrs. Hull. You benefited from those crimes. I was his wife, not his partner. My voice was steadier than I felt. And I'm offering you something better than prosecuting a widow who didn't know. I'm offering you the entire syndicate. How? Richard Caldwell gave me 48 hours to find the ledger. That was 2 days ago. I pulled out the burner phone, showed her the text messages, increasingly threatening demands from a number I knew belonged to Richard's office. I tell him I have it. I arrange a meeting. And you get everyone in one room. Vance studied me for a long moment. You understand what you're proposing? These people killed your husband. My husband died of a stroke. Your husband died 12 hours after telling Richard Caldwell he'd hidden evidence that could destroy them all. You really think that's coincidence? The parking garage tilted. Lance's death sudden, convenient, right before the FBI closed in. I'd been so focused on grieving, I'd never questioned the timing. Then you understand why I want them caught, I said quietly. The wire was smaller than I expected, taped against my ribs by a tech who avoided eye contact while Vance ran through the protocol. I would go in alone, Marcus waiting outside, FBI in surveillance, Vance monitoring every word. One phrase if things went wrong, I need more time. They'd come in immediately. Don't try to be a hero, Vance warned. Get the admission on tape and get out. Richard had chosen Lance's office for the meeting. Poetic, he'd said in his text. We finish where it started. I drove through the gates at midnight, the mansion lit up like a stage set, and understood that this was always how it would end. In the room where Lance had locked himself away for 30 years, keeping secrets that would outlive him. I parked and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. The wire pressed against my skin. Reminder that I wasn't alone. That somewhere in the darkness, people were listening. I walked toward the house, toward the office, toward the truth that had been waiting behind that locked door all along. Richard wasn't alone. 3 men I'd never seen before stood in Lance's office, expensive suits and dead eyes, the kind of people who made violence look like business. They turned when I entered, and the door clicked shut behind me. Mrs. Hull. Richard's smile was all teeth. I trust you brought what we discussed. I held up the ledger, leather binding catching lamplight. Everyone's here? All the partners. We don't use that word. The tallest one spoke, accent I couldn't place. We're concerned investors. Your husband managed certain portfolio diversifications for us. He laundered money for criminals. The wire pressed against my ribs, Marcus's voice in my head. Keep them talking, get names, get admissions. And now you want the evidence back so you can keep doing it. Such ugly language. Richard moved closer. Your husband was an artist, Christy. He understood that money doesn't care about borders or laws. It just wants to flow. We facilitated that flow. To drug cartels, arms dealers. The ledger lists everything. Which is why we need it back. The tall man's patience was thinning. Hand it over and you walk away with enough money to start fresh. Refuse and what? You'll kill me like you killed Lance. Silence. Heavy, damning silence. Richard's smile faded. Your husband's death was unfortunate, but necessary. He was going to turn state's evidence. Thought he could buy redemption by destroying everything we'd built. He stepped closer, hand outstretched. Don't make his mistake. I need more time. The phrase was barely out of my mouth before glass shattered. FBI agents poured through windows and doors, voices shouting commands that blurred together. Someone shoved me to the floor, protective and rough, while bodies moved in tactical precision around me. It was over in seconds. Richard on his knees, hands zip-tied behind his back, the tall man and his companions already being led away. Vance stood over me, offered her hand. You did good, Mrs. Hull. 3 months later, I signed the last of the paperwork in a lawyer's office that smelled like lemon polish instead of expensive cologne. The mansion was seized, the accounts drained, every asset Lance had accumulated now property of the federal government. The jewelry, the legitimate pieces I'd inherited from my mother, the ones that predated Lance, I donated to Elena's new foundation for victims of financial fraud. The immunity deal held. No charges filed, though my name would forever be attached to Lance's crimes in every news article, every documentary, every cautionary tale about willful blindness. I walked out of that office as Christy Brennan, my maiden name reclaimed, carrying a single suitcase and a bank account with $7,000, money I'd earned myself from selling my story to Elena for her exposé. The apartment was small, a studio in a neighborhood where people worked real jobs and didn't ask questions about your past. No marble floors, no chandelier, no locked doors hiding secrets. Just 4 walls and a window that looked out over the street where life happened at ground level. I made coffee in a cheap pot and sat on a secondhand sofa, watching traffic move below. Somewhere in the city, Richard and his partners were beginning life sentences. Somewhere else, families were receiving restitution payments from the seized assets. And somewhere in a $40 motel room, maybe someone else was just beginning to run from a life they'd never questioned. I hoped they'd run faster than I had. What would you do if you discovered your entire life was built on lies? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping true crime stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.